chaos, anarchy. So many stories deal with upheaval. Today I'm going to tell you 3 ways on anarchism can help your writing. Whether you're writing high fantasy, low fantasy, or anything in between, Learning to Master is here for you. Stop. Before we go any further, I want to make it very clear that I am not endorsing or attacking anarchism as a political principle. It is for you to decide what you believe. The lead into this video aside, I do think that there should be a point of clarification here. Anarchism, in the view of Noam Chomsky, is not necessarily how we think of anarchism today in the United States. We think of chaos and violence, and though those things are a part of how you change society in very radical ways, anarchism, the way that Noam Chomsky defines it, is simply the justification of authoritarian force. If you're going to secede power to somebody, they have an obligation to justify why they need that power. One anecdote that I think really explains what Noam Chomsky is referring to about justifying authoritarian force is an example of a little girl who's trying to cross a street, and if she's going to step in front of a car, your authoritarian response to block her is justified, and you don't necessarily need to justify it outright, it is implied. Whereas political justification is required for taking authoritarian force upon people. And whether you agree or disagree, I just want to make sure that you understand we're talking about his anarchism and not necessarily what we all think of as anarchy now. Way number 1 is tone. The entire book is a defense of classical libertarian anarchism, and so it's made as a philosophical argument, and this is a different tone than what you would have for everyday people who are just going to the local bar and getting some drinks. This is something that you can use to model how maybe a philosopher or a highly educated individual is going to talk in your world. The second way on anarchism can help your writing is through adding complexity to a conflict. Now, this is different from an internal complexity where characters are dealing with multiple things at the same time. This is more of a war complexity when you're dealing with opposing sides. So much of our fiction deals with A against B, good against evil. I think this comes from the perspective of monotheistic religions where we have, a good god and an evil devil, and it's the two sides battling it out. But this is not necessarily how conflicts in history have proceeded. A good 40 pages of this book is devoted to the Spanish Civil War and how there's a group of anarchists in Spain at the time who their entire efforts have been minimalized by the historians who have written about this topic. So I think that you can use this in your own writing as a way to understand how maybe you have two sides who are battling it out. What if there's a third nation that's fighting? What if there's a third group? There's smaller groups and bands, and how is all of the politics related within this? Is it just one authoritarian state versus another, one, ruler versus another, or are there more interconnected sub-regions that are also in this conflict that are going to have to either choose a side or they're fighting on their own, and how do they get played by everybody else? This explains pretty well how anarchists fit into the Spanish Civil War. The third way on anarchism can help your writing is through the actual defense of anarchism. Now, again, I'm not endorsing it as a political perspective, but because everything has to be justified for the use of authoritarian force, that same use of justification should be used to your writing. When you're drafting, you're writing for yourself, but when you're revising for others, and everything needs to be justified. If you're going to go on a tangent about how a coffee cup looks purple and how that somehow has brought the main character ultimate joy, it needs to be justified within the context of your book. How you justify it is up to you, but it needs to feel justified, that there's some importance to why you're spending so much time doing this. And this is for everything in your book. You have to justify it. You have to explain why it is there and why it is needed. And the principle of anarchism is exactly that. It is justifying, in this case, force, but it is that same idea of justifying your novel. This is LTM. I'm Andrew Palmer. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time right here on Learning to Master. So many stories deal with upheaval. Oh, I'm getting the echo. Oh, shit.